Hi, and welcome to another Alla Prima demo by me, Hans Guerin, with Art Mastery Mentorship. The last video, I went from backward to forward as kind of a quirk, but I really liked it. And on top of that one, this one, I had a bad mindset, and mindset is huge in the art biz. Like I didn't get down in a early enough time. I was kind of in a rush, and it had been just a bruiser of a week, and you know. If I didn't schedule this video, I just wouldn't have done it. And I just had this bad mindset, just like, oh my gosh, it's like, I don't want to do this. I'm not ready. Wouldn't it be better to do it another day when I'm feeling better and all this stuff? And I just wanted to, do other things other than high concentration alla prima stuff. Here I am because I scheduled it, and I so appreciate you watching it. That it kind of compelled me to do it, and in the end, I really happy I did, but in the beginning I just wasn't feeling it, and that affected the way I was seeing the painting, and it was just hard to like what I was doing. Again, it's just a mindset thing. There was nothing really that wrong with the beginning. I said over and over again in the live video, which you can watch, that it just didn't have that punch that I like from the very beginning. When I get into those mass conception ideas, it's just the simple drawing, and I manipulated that a little bit to get it just right. And then that abstract simplification, I usually go pretty garish on that stage, and I just couldn't feel the excitement of the painting early on. And watching it from backward to forward, you can see that the painting turned out pretty well by the end. It's not what I've been doing typically. Lately, most of those alla primas are really rough alla prima, brushstrokey paintings, but eggshells are smooth, and glass has a soft quality to it too. So this has a totally different feel than the other ones. And I use a lot smaller brushwork and more kind of gently easing the value shifts and things like that, instead of just a big blob of paint here connected to a blob of paint there. Which I enjoy both techniques, but honestly, I'm more of a brushstroke painter than I am a smooth, soft painter. So this is me just kind of showing my range, I guess. So the reason I'm not talking much about the painting yet, other than kind of the mindset issues, is, for one, mindset is huge in painting, and it's really hard to get out of that. It's so good to have an experienced professional to be able to say, look, I understand your mindset. I understand what it can do to your perception of your painting, and how you are motivated to push through. And I could have really used that. I mean, I had some guests watching, and they were really encouraging, and that was really nice. But mindset is enormous in painting. But the other thing too is the detail phases are actually really slow. I mean, you got the little tiny brushes out, you're making tiny little bits of progress, and those things can look fantastic, but it doesn't move the needle much. So I talk about a phase in a painting where you talk about the law of diminishing returns. Yeah, you could just keep adding ad infinitum, but eventually, you're getting less and less out of each addition. It's enhancing the painting. It's increasing the enjoyment of the painting less and less and less. So the viewer isn't going to see a lot of the really subtle things. It's just going to maybe lead to an overall impression, and the details can be really nice on a painting. Super soft edges can be really nice, but it's not really changing that first impression where a viewer is going to judge the work. So I've always thought this is true. I wonder if there's a way of verifying it or something, that when somebody walks into a gallery, they don't do so with blindfolds on. They don't get ushered up to the painting and then release the blindfold and instantly see the details and super soft edges or brushwork or whatever. They see it from across the room, where it's all the big shape, the big impact. And so edges and details and everything, they can be very impactful, but it has to survive that first impression first. So a lot of times I feel like art videos, they take a little bit of time to develop, unless it's a short or something. People might lose interest in it on that early blocking phase if they just don't truly understand that sort of abstraction and blockiness as a moment to celebrate. This really neat moment where you're laying the sort of steel beams of your skyscraper. They're going to hold up the rest of your painting. And so maybe you want to put in the detail or the, the concrete gargoyle on the roof or something. That's going to make the building special and pretty, but it's those steel beams that hold it together. And that's the phase I really love. So we're going to build up to that crescendo, and then we're going to reverse it again and then blast through it in even faster speed from start to finish at the end. So stay tuned for that. And so I'm just working on little edges, working those edges into that sort of rich middle tone that I started with, and really just trying to enhance those 5 values, but without any real brushwork. So highlight within the midtones, that turn from brighter near the highlight to darker near the shadow, warmer near the highlight with this warm light source to cooler near the shadow with this, not receiving that warmth of the light. So that's our middle tone range. And then turning shadow, we're no longer facing the lamp. It's that soft edged moment that happens on an egg. Reflected light is, I think, shown really well on an egg, but it's more than reflected light. It's also refracted light. Because of the translucency of the eggshell, there's a little bit extra glow in there, and that's really nice. I love it. So that's our reflected light, and in this case, reflected light plus refracted light. And then the egg blocks the light, casts a shadow onto the table. So then I have my 5 elements that can come in pretty rough at first, but then gets finessed for a subject like this. In some subjects, you don't have to finesse at all. You can just leave them big, choppy brush strokes, and it's super cool. I just don't feel like it's the right effect for eggs or flowers, or the difference between painting a more feminine subject than a masculine subject, right? You can have that choppiness and that strength of brushstroke and maybe that delicacy of the more feminine subject matter. Okay, so now some of that finesse is getting peeled away, right? So we're reverse engineering the process. We're starting from the end and working our way toward the beginning. And you can see that I do put in things fairly rough, even though this is going to be fairly smooth, but in this case, smoother than usual. I went in my normal progression of the subject matter as a really loose block in, the loosest I'm going to be as just kind of raw information to base the secondary characteristics of those more distant shells, and then the glass, and then the tertiary things like the environment, the background, and the table. They all get blocked into a very simple state, but beyond the first one, the first element, that subject matter, has less to go by, and so it's a bit more raw of a guess. So I leave that extra simple, and then as I'm building the block in, that's getting more and more specific because I have more things to compare. And so when I go back to the focal point, now I've got a ton of raw information, manipulatable information, things that I can push and pull until I get exactly what I want in that subject, but it's in context now. And not only context, but context that was built around the most important element. So some artists, and I won't judge them for this, I've seen spectacular artwork for a lot of different techniques, and some artists will want to put in the environment first, and that gives a better context for taking that early guesswork on the subject matter. Yeah, again, that works for them. For me, I want to base everything on that focal point. Like the intensity of the background is meant to just enhance the subject. So if the subject's not there, then you're just kind of putting the main focal point into a box of values and color that maybe you can change later, but it's kind of retrofitting the excitement into the painting. And I like to see that right away, which is another reason that I was really struggling with this painting because it just felt to me as pretty dull. And again, I think it's more mindset than anything. So here I am, I'm removing detail out of the glass, and you can see it going back to that simple block-in where I'm squinting and looking at value relationships. Less is more with glass. You want to lose your edges a little bit. It has to be lost and found in order to show that real nice transparency. You have to feel the background through it. And yeah, it's getting down to the sort of base essential right around now, where it went from drawing to abstract simplification, that squint level abstraction where it doesn't really matter if it's glass or shells or table or whatever. It's just simply the shapes that you see, and those shapes don't necessarily look like the finished product, and that's what makes them abstract. If you're just looking at simple relationship, then everything's important, including negative shapes, but you were just really getting that essence down. And so yeah, I say everything's important, but yeah, I do start with that focal point, but still it's not like I'm saying, okay, I'm gonna really work an eye until it's perfect and then move on to the nose and make that perfect. That's not the case. It's, in fact, the most simple blocking is going to be where I start, because it's the one that's least informed by environment. There we go. Getting down to that sort of big blocky area where I was just squinting and seeing whatever shapes survive that squinting. In this case, that refracted plus reflected light in the bottoms of the eggs were really visible when I squinted. Most of the time, unless it's a really shiny object and a very bright light source, that reflected light disappears into the shadow. That wasn't the case this time. And again, I think it's that extra glow that happens in an egg being translucent. So you can see a flatness, you can see the outlines, you can see that I didn't work the little spiky broken edges of the shells because I didn't want to paint around them. So any little detail, it's likely either going to get lost or you have to paint so rigid to protect them that, I don't know. To me, that's not enjoyable. And the risk is to either leave a ghost edge or to lose that texture anyway with imprecision. So I'll say of all the characteristics I have as an artist, precision isn't one of them. Like I know people that almost never miss with the brush. They hit that spot exactly. They get that detail note just perfect on one shot. Me, not so much. If I put in detail, I might have to trim it with the environment, and I'm okay with that. You know, I'm skilled at problem solving. I have a really firm grasp of the fundamentals, and I can apply them, and I have the ability of making a mistake and adjusting. This video is getting pretty close to that raw essential. You can see the little indications of detail just backing away. But I second guessed a lot of things early on because, again, my mindset was pretty bad for the start of this one. But I like the end product, you know, and I like the company that I had to keep me motivated and excited about the painting. So you can see that blockiness. Those are just 5 categories. Now the inside of the shells are informed by that refraction, and it's inherently lighter value than the outside of the eggshell, so white versus that sort of red-brown. But it's all in blocky categories, and now everything's going to wither away. You'll see it backward and forward. Yeah, you know, this is pretty different from the other videos that I put out recently. It has a different feel, has a different technique, has a different selection of brushes and edges. I like to show my range. I enjoy mixing things up. I don't like to be formulaic, although I do have a process that I like more than anything else, which is that mass conception, the simple line work of edges, which is very abstract. It's all about design. Negative shapes are just as important as positive shapes. And then the abstract simplification, starting from primary element to secondary to tertiary back to primary, and then work my way out. And sometimes I don't even have to define the blocked and stuff that's, you know, not the focal point, and I can make a decision as like, well, how much finish does this painting need? So that's where I say that the painting it's going to have its own voice. It's going to have its own personality, and I like to embrace that. Because there's some things that I'm not going to predict on the course of the painting from start to finish. I can have a clear idea where I'm going. If I really want a good plan, I could do a finished sketch first based on thumbnail sketches. I could do a color study on the side, and then hopefully never have to make any decisions. But I don't enjoy that as much. I think the painting sometimes suggests some things that I didn't anticipate, and I like to embrace that. Sometimes I'll change the focal point. Sometimes I'll radically change the brushwork if I really like it, or maybe something's not working, it needs to be refined. So I'm quite willing to have just an open dialogue with my painting, unless it's like a commission where I'm really trying to find what the commission is looking for, and I'm the artist trying to find that in their dialogues with me and my progression of the painting. From least important to most important, right now I'm removing the tertiary elements, and then it's going to be the secondary elements of the glass and the more distant eggshells, and then the primary, the beginning, down to line work. And then we'll speed this up, we'll rock and roll, start to finish. This was the kind of pulled together version of the abstract simplification. You're going to see it get from simple to even more simple. It's basically just broken down into a pattern of outside edges broken down by the shadow shape, and it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. And each one of those points can be measured, right? So plumb lines, proportion measurements, and jigsaw puzzle. Those are my 3 methods of measurement, and it allows me to really make a lot of decisions. I can move things around. I don't really have to settle for anything I don't like at this stage, and you can just see how simple this was from the very start. Battling fatigue, battling kind of not feeling like painting, and This stage just didn't feel as satisfying as usual, but yeah, I got through it and I got to a finished painting by the end. So we're about to really blast through start to finish in the way people are accustomed to seeing video demonstrations of, Alla Prima. Not a whole lot to say. I mean, I've already covered most of what I'm thinking in this painting. The palette that I used is a pretty consistent thing. It's almost like keys on a keyboard. Like, I don't want to, if I'm playing a song on a piano, I don't want to guess where the next sound is going to. I want it so automatic that my fingers are just moving where I want them to and hit the right key. Same thing with typing on a keyboard for writing, right? You just don't want to guess where the letters are. So my palette is set up almost the same way every time. The only exception is when I'm experimenting with a different color or maybe a more limited palette, but it's still the same system even with a limited palette. So I go from white to lemon yellow to cad yellow medium to cad red medium to alizarin crimson, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, raw umber. Now I usually have sap green. This time I had chrome. I don't know why my sap tube was missing. Phthalo blue is my warm blue, ultramarine or indigo for my cool blue, and then I like black. Sometimes I add a purple, dioxazine purple. But that's my typical palette. It goes in an order from white to pure warms to my earth tones in the middle, my tertiaries, then to cools. So green, blue, purple, black. And that system I can plug and play anytime I want, from lighter to darker, warm to cool. And so sometimes it doesn't cleanly fit into that mix and I just make a decision, but for the most part I know where my system is. If I want my more muted earth tones in the middle, boom, I'm there. If I want to warm those earth tones up, boom, I'm on the right. Cool it down on the left. Like I just know where to put my brush intuitively every single time. So here we go from start to finish, or oil up my painting, get into mass conception, simple to specific. This is simple design work. Nothing is sacred. So I'm quite willing to move things around when I don't like it. You can see these little shifts that I'm doing on this stage. That's because, my first guess, maybe it was a little tight on the left. Maybe I think I decided to make the eggs just a little bit smaller and shift things over to the right. So I made those adjustments before committing to anything. Now those more defined edges is because the line work got a little bit sloppy and I wanted to see it a little bit better when I do my abstract simplification. But I'm going to obliterate these lines for the most part. I want to paint through them just so it doesn't end up being a really razor tight edge. There's nothing so specific that I have to protect it anyway. And now abstract simplification. We're going to get only simply what I see when I squint. So here's the tertiary items, background and foreground. Just a simple guess. I'm just really ready to make the right decision after these simple guesses got in place. So it's very unlikely that this is going to be perfect. It's just something that gives me a suggestion, something I can work from. Like I said, at this phase, I really was not feeling it. It just did not have the drama that I usually look for early on. And looking at the video, it wasn't really even that true. It was just my brain getting in the way. Maybe less so my brain, more my emotions getting in the way. I just was not ready to do this tonight. And I had something working pretty fine. I find that's the case with students too. They can have a mindset that's just not letting them enjoy what they're doing. Or maybe they're comparing themselves to another artist. Or just have been in a struggle for a while and they're just carrying that feeling into whatever painting. Because a lot of times art teaching is, yeah, sure, it's fundamentals, sure, it's teaching technique, but a lot of times it's teaching mindset, encouragement, right? So you're going to lift those students up and say, hey, you're doing better than you think you are, and this is all you have to do to problem solve to that next step. And you're just not seeing that next step in your mind's eye, but I can, because I've been through this so many times. Just like in the beginning, not much happens after that big start, right? You're going to refine some things. You're going to find some edges. You're going to get some highlights. You're going to get accents. You're going to get neat little effects. Like I invented the highlight on the primary egg. I just didn't see it in my light. I put in a projected light going through the glass into the shadow. It just wasn't there. But I know the possibilities of what could be and what's believable. And so I just wanted it. So I put it in. And you can see how much I'm working these middle tones to get them soft and subtle with this tiny little brush. That's radically different than the other videos that I show with this Alla Prima series that I've been doing. So I encourage you to look at all those and you'll see just different thought patterns, different things to capture the spirit of the painting, and this is a different spirit than some of the other ones. These are really subtle curves with eggs rather than, you know, things that I can be a little choppier with. Like the last one was a copper pot where I just really wanted to cake it on. All right, so there was that projected light. I'm refining these edges. I'm getting those little cracks and little sharp edges. I'm getting little outlines on there to make really instant plane changes. I don't want to have a soft edge going from the cracked shell into the opening. I want the soft edges to be on the outside. So that's just contrast, right? So everything is contrast. So yeah, values from light to dark, that's going to really make the 3 dimensions pop. But really the smoothness of the egg versus the roughness of the foreground and background, the sharpness of those edges going from the outside of the eggshell to the inside, the drama of those reflected lights. So those all make a really big difference, contrasting dramatic, vivid color against duller color. So there's a lot of different subtle contrasts that add to the value range in this painting. I did one little addition after this. The camera dropped and it didn't capture it, but I put in little cracked eggshells in this. So I'm about to put up the official finished product. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you the next time.